wonderful idea to suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and all the countries and
Welcome to this week's version of Dialogue Houston. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us perhaps for the first time here for Dialogue Houston, we're here now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, at the top of the hour, let me thank you for your thoughtful calls, emails, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired here on HCC's Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community public affairs show here on HCC, now proudly in its 30th year. We want to have a great conversation this afternoon with a new group that is forming that I really wanted you to know about because it is timely, it is a movement, it is something that's going to go on and will show great results in the city of Houston as we move toward our wonderful 2nd anniversary in 2036. I think this is one of the groups that's going to make a difference on how we understand Houstonians going forward in a collective, holistic, inclusive, equity way, because that's what it's all about going forward. And then we're going to talk to the founder of this group and also to let her know that we really appreciate her coming on. Brandi Brown, who's been with us before with the Hype Freedom School, is going to introduce this new group called Black Impact Houston. She has a very special guest with her that's going to be discussing both Black Impact Houston as we go forward. So Brandi, I'm just going to turn it over to you right quick for a moment, and then we'll dive into our conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. It is great to be with you again. And so I always feel at home when I'm interviewing with you. So I definitely appreciate it. So today we have with us Joelle Esquit, who will talk a little bit about herself, but wanted to just invite Joelle. Joelle and I sit what we are considering as the thinking team of Black Impact.
I love that title, the thinking team.
Yes. And so oftentimes in traditional settings, we are accustomed to hearing executive team, leadership team, and really kind of leaning in on the aspect that we're coming together to really reimagine what we can do and how we can do the work as a collective, as Black-led organizations. Joelle is a phenomenal leader. She is the director of programming at the Normal Anomaly Initiative. And so she and I have been working together now for almost 2 years. And so it's been great to be able to grow and learn with one another.
Joelle, so glad to have you on the show and welcome. But tell us first of all about your initiative because it sounds fascinating.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited and super thankful to be here. I am Director of Programming for the Normal Anomaly Initiative, Inc. We are located in South Houston on Bissonnette and the Beltway. We have a community center. It's Houston's first Black queer community center called the Black Queer Center for Liberation. And our organization is really about the forward mobility of Black queer plus person. So it's anyone that exists that is Black and or queer. And we do that through direct services, through advocacy and leadership training, through capacity building, and through community engagement and events.
And it's so important to learn more about your community and all the facets and all the various elements of it that makes it up. Houston has been very good about supporting the gay community over the years, but I think to have the specificity of focusing in on issues that impact Black and brown gay and queer people differently, it's so important to have that knowledge and information, is it not?
It is definitely important. It is definitely important. And if anyone that knows that is marginalized, that is Black and or queer, knows that our communities have specific needs and we face very specific circumstances. So our organization really addresses those social determinants that impact our community. And I'm just very excited to be a part of Black Impact Houston and be a part of a larger collective of Black-led nonprofits.
So Brandon, let's talk about Black Impact Houston because it is an umbrella organization. It is a collective. It is a collaboration. It is a coalition. But it really encompasses almost any Black organization that wants to join it, does it not?
Absolutely. I think oftentimes when we think about Black-led organizations, we often think of those nonprofits from a 501c3 standpoint, but really looking at how do we address Black-led initiatives in the city of Houston. And so with Black Impact Houston, we've been able to collectively come together and identify ways that we can strengthen and support the Black-led nonprofit community in Houston. And so Joelle touched on a little bit of that, but we've looked at how do we do that through mentorship? How do we do that through leadership? And how do we do that through advocacy? I think in all three of those areas, we're able to lean on each other's expertise and be able to really strengthen who we are as Black leaders, but more importantly, strengthen the impact that we have in the communities where we serve.
How old is the organization now?
So we launched in March of 2021. And so we are entering into our second year of membership. It's a membership-driven collective. So we have over 35 organizations that are members of Black Impact Houston, and our membership drive is open now and will be open until the end of the year. So for any Black-led organization that's in the city of Houston that's interested in joining us, it's a great opportunity to connect with other Black leaders and the work that we're doing on the ground.
Now, is Black Impact Houston as a coalition working with other coalitions of other ethnic groups, or as you strengthen yours first and then get together with the others? Because I think it's going to be important that we have that wonderful approach all together.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we've been very clear on and really trying to be strategic, I often say it's hard. I think, Mr. Payne, I've said this, and I hope it's okay to say it out loud now, but I feel like as a Black people, we are one of the most inclusive groups of people there are. And so when we're doing things that's for us and by us, we often start thinking about the other communities that often get left out, and how do we bring those communities into the work and fold them into the work. We have been very strategic in thinking, how do we build Black communities first and our Black leaders first, and then create this model and the foundation where we can expand to our other brothers and sisters who are also marginalized and underrepresented.
I understand that, because there's a whole educational process that even goes with this.
Yeah.
Understand our own selves and our own community, what the issues are and how they impact us disproportionately and affect us. I think it's great that you're taking it and growing it internally first before you kind of expand it to include others or ask others to be part of it. But I do see the Black Impact Network, out of all the Black-led things that I've seen in Houston over now 50 years, that this is probably the one that has the most opportunity and the most chance of doing what it has set out to do by keep adding all these organizations as the umbrella. We needed an umbrella organization.
Absolutely. I thought it was fascinating, and I think we talked about this a little bit the last time, but I thought it was fascinating when, there was this movement of putting dollars in Black-led organizations after the murder of George Floyd.
Right.
And I got phone calls from foundations and from funders and stakeholders I'd never heard from before. Like, I wanted to hear from them, but never heard from them before. But at the end of each one of those calls, there was this question that was asked of me, which was, do you know of any other Black-led organizations in Houston? And so I thought, how interesting is it that we are in this city and there's not a place where we can search and find who are the Black leaders in this community that have the lived experiences, that's on the ground doing more with less,
right.
And really working hard. And how do we create this directory, or how do we create this framework where there's never a time in this city where you're looking for a specific organization or you're looking for a specific population where you can't find them.
Yeah. And to Joelle's point earlier too, that we tend to focus many times with nonprofits, we think of charity, right?
Yeah.
Look at the justice side. It's not either or, it's both and. It's not charity or justice. Charity, I always say, charity is the great downstream response. We react to the needs we see, the concerns we see. Justice is the upstream. How do you get proactive and do eradication, systemic change, and policy issues to address the issues before they become a problem that you have to address from a charitable standpoint? So that's why I think Black Impact Houston can begin to talk about that advocacy side, that systemic change side, the policy issues side, the legislation that we need to do, to begin to create the kind of environment we want for all our citizens, for Black and all citizens, because I think whatever this organization does, everyone will benefit because of the work that you've done that will affect initially the African American Black community, but will affect all Houstonians.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think about the social, the different social issues that we touch, right, as Black leaders. When I think about the different collectives and the initiatives that I'm a part of the Out of School Time Collaborative, right? So we focus on just the out of school time. And so Joelle can mention some of the collaboratives that she's a part of, and that is just for that specific sector. And for us, we've been able to bring the different sectors together to figure out how do we strengthen our numbers to be able to address all of those different sectors. So I have found probably one of the most rewarding pieces of my work is being able to be a part of Black Impact Houston. I think someone summed it up so well. I was talking to them about, just the impact that we've been able to see just since we started it, and really kind of put it in a nutshell that we've been able to really create a culture where it's cooperation over competition. And I think we're talking about this charity model and we're talking about this giving and nonprofits. I think there's been a culture of folks who think that as nonprofit leaders, we're competing for dollars. And we really have worked on kind of coming from a place and a framework that there is enough for us all. And so really looking at how do we kind of lean into that and we grow for one another and with one another and not be in a position to compete with one another.
And to Joel, back to your first point, through this organization, the Impact Houston, the collaborative, the umbrella, those individual organizations get to learn about your community. So we get to learn, learn from each other about, because many times, as Brandi was saying, we focus in a little pigeonhole. This is what we do. The nonprofits have have blinders on. We focus on this one issue. That's our issue. But you need to know about all the other issues that's impacting all those others around you.
I think thank you, Larry, for that, Mr. Payne. I think that what oftentimes happens, especially for Black nonprofit leaders, is we often are working in silos. And like Brandi said, because we are oftentimes working on more and greater problems, but with less resources, we're simply working to survive a lot of times. So it's really great to come into community with other Black nonprofit leaders, and we all understand each other. While we may not come from very specific sects, we're all Black leaders. We're all Black leaders in nonprofit, and we all understand fundamentally each other. It's really like, we often joke that it's really like a family reunion every time we come together, because that's the energy that we have. And it's very different from we're competing for dollars, we're competing for grants, we're competing for resources. Black Impact Houston is really about community, and it's very family focused and community focused, which is essentially what our greater Black community is about.
We have to help each other. We have to learn from each other. We have to learn about each other's issues. We have to be supportive of each other's issues. And we have to always think about that almost every issue that impacts our community or any community of color is always going to be back to the policy. It's always going to be, how can we affect legislation and policy that will help our communities? Whether it's resources, more understanding, more education. But you look at the whole list of all those issues, it always comes back to policy. And I keep telling people that if you don't figure out the policy impact of the systemic change and eradication you're trying to accomplish, you'll never get there. And of course, it starts with the simple process of voting. That's the first part of this process, to make sure you got everyone fired up, ready, aim, and go vote. Coming up very soon in this November. And then, of course, the next November is the big election. So we have to really think about how we engage our communities. And I love, again, the organization of Black Impact with all the nonprofits. We can get all of those nonprofits fired up and engage in voter registration and voter turnout. That right there will help the causes that we're all working on.
I'm smiling because, so Joelle, I just sent Joelle and the thinking team an email, a flurry of emails this morning. But I'm smiling because one of the things that we're working on to articulate with Black Impact Houston is really identifying how many individuals, communities, and families each one of our members serve. And collectively, how can we display those numbers and mobilize our program participants to be in a position to affect policy. And I think we talk about advocacy, we know, and I think we have several examples of just since we formed Black Impact Houston of what it was like for one of our members to say, hey, I've been looking at this process. This process doesn't seem like those Black leaders that's involved in the process have an equitable and fair chance. And so I've CC'd Brandi Brown, who is with Black Impact Houston, and we would like to have a conversation. And so some of those things and being able to say that we're just not speaking for one organization, but we're speaking for many. And I think even when we're talking about affecting policy, really being able to have just some true and frank and conversations about what it is that we see as Black leaders and what are the things that we need to be able to create that change. And I definitely think mobilizing our communities that we serve is an asset of Black Impact Houston that will push us, as you're talking about us being around for many years to come, it will be able to be in a position where in 3 to 5 years, you'll see that change that we all know that we need to see.
So is it Black organizations or is it Black or both, and Black-led organizations, or is it both?
So right now it's Black-led organizations. And I think over the time we will start shifting to inviting some allies to be a part of this work, but then also those that are Black serving organizations. And so we recognize that there are leaders that do not look like us, but that's doing a phenomenal job in serving the communities that represent our Black and Brown families. And so we're starting with Black-led and we'll eventually moving to Black serving as well.
So the Black-led organization, in other words, you have a Black person as the head president, CEO, or executive director, but the organization may serve and cover other issues other than just Black issues.
Absolutely.
We want those in the fold also, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have not, so we keep it open. So we recognize that our Black leaders, there's a diverse group of Black leaders. I think one of the things that we've gotten a chance through Black Impact Houston, because we started and we start off with such a strong foundation, we've gotten an opportunity to explore a planning process. And so we were approached by one of the stakeholders in Houston to ask us, what would it look like for us to be able to do some planning support for Black Impact Houston, where we can not only look at the members of Black Impact Houston, but we can look at all Black-led organizations. And so what we found is that the diversity of the Black leaders in Houston is absolutely amazing, from the expertise that they offer for how long they've been in this field, from the breadth of work and that they actually do within the communities. And then we also are starting to define, what do we mean by Black serving and Black-led? Does that mean you just have a Black leader? Or does that mean that you have a Black leader and a majority of Black board members as well? So I think there are some things that as a community we've been sifting through, and during the planning process, well, we've gotten a chance to engage with many different Black-led organizations outside of the members of Black Impact Houston. We've heard from them. We've gotten a chance to listen to them through focus groups and listening sessions. We have a storytelling project that we're doing right now, where we also want to keep the institution of our Black-led organizations for those leaders who have been around for 20 plus years. How do we keep those institutions going, and they have the succession plan that they need to transition to making sure that they're around for many years to come?
We don't have a list of those. We hadn't had a list of those because people don't really know who they are or where they are. I mean, we've been good at highlighting Black entrepreneurs and not Black entrepreneurship. We got that list. We've done Black Restaurant Week, so we know now that we have more Black restaurants than we thought we had, as we have done that. But we've never done anything with the nonprofits. So I think it's important for not only the Black community, but for all Houstonians to know that we have this many active working Black nonprofits led by Black individuals who are serving their communities, but we all can work together on whatever the issues that impact us jointly, because I think that's what's beginning to realize. It's just not a fact. If it's impacting this side of town, it's also impacting that side of town.
Yes. And I'll let Joelle jump in too. So feel free to jump in. But I get excited because I think there's so many things.
Too, so Excuse me.
So, I mean, when you talked about not having that list, one of the things that we've been able to do, and so appreciative for the Black-led organizations who have participated in our process. So we've surveyed Black-led organizations to really figure out, what are their strengths? What are some needs and some areas that they would like to see? What are some of the perceptions that we see with nonprofits and Black-led initiatives in Houston? And how do we reimagine and resource our work in a way that we don't go without, and that we're able to do what we need to do with the proper resources that we need to really do this work. And so we're excited that later on in the fall, that we'll be able to release the data and the reports from that data. And the data will belong to the community. So even though we've done it through this planning process, it will be data that everyone can access. And so you'll be able to see how many Black-led organizations that are in Houston that we were able to survey, what's been their length of service, like how many do we have from 0 to 5 years old? How many do we have from 6 to 10? And how many 20 plus organizations, and what are their budget sizes? And so we've been able to capture some amazing data from our Black-led organizations, and we're excited to be able to report out the data as well as recommendations of what do we need to be able to fully resource the Black-led organizations that are in the Houston area.
So sometime in the near future in the fall, there will be a coming out event.
It will be. There will be a data walk that we'll be doing. And so we'll do the data walk with some of our Black Impact Houston members and some of the individuals that the Black leaders that we have in our network that are research gurus to be able to do that data walk. And then we'll also looking to host a funder nonprofit kind of dialogue to be able to share that data. Because not only did we survey the nonprofits, we also serve some of the foundations here in Houston to really get an idea of what should we know as nonprofit leaders about the foundations and the stakeholders in Houston, and how does that better inform the work that we need to do when we're talking about resourcing our organization and our work.
So important. A similar thing a few years ago in the arts community changed the way we fund and look at arts. Because out of that art study and research and data gathering, it was clearly that disproportionately art groups of color, but of all kinds, were totally underfunded, not funded as well, not thought of as well, not even thought about capitalizing as well. So out of that came a little bit more clarity on this distribution of funds in a more equitable way. I see that happening also now with nonprofits in the Black community. Once you do this data, to say, look, we're not getting our fair proportion of what we should be getting. And so the numbers, and here's where I'm headed with this, the numbers for the African-American community, we keep saying that our numbers are decreasing, and that's true in a way, but it's also because the community is now coming together. It shows the strength, I think, of what's possible within that arena of the numbers we have. And there's new data that says, of course, that the state of Texas officially, as of this report in today's Chronicle, is now an Hispanic state. It's a predominantly Hispanic state. And Houston is a predominantly Hispanic city. So that the question becomes, as we look at the juxtaposition of the African-American community, Hispanic community, and other communities of color, for the same funding resources and possibilities that we all will be going after, it is important to have this kind of data and research to look at exactly where the dollars are going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's some amazing studies to show the gaps of funding between communities of color and those that are not. And the gap is large. We look at the data and we think about how important this work is. It is because the inequities that you see through those funding, through the funding landscape really shows that, I think with some of the things that we know, that as a Black community, that we're innovative, right? And that we have learned how to do less, more with less often. But if we truly had the resources that we really needed, the impact and the systemic change that you would see, I think would be tremendous.
Yeah. There's an organization called NHPO, the National Hispanic Professional Organization, that is trying to do the same thing within the Hispanic community to assess where their strengths and weaknesses are, where the dollars are going. They have not done this kind of research yet on their nonprofits. It'll be interesting to see if they take this on as their next challenge. Because what they have focused on, they had a leadership institute that does not exist, but will start again, I think. And so when you talked about leadership training, one of the things I think that this organization and others perhaps would join with is some kind of joint leadership opportunity for persons of color to come together. I call it the old Saturday school model, where we come together on a Saturday, our joint communities come together, and we have leadership training around these issues that are impacting social, economic, and political realities that are affecting both of our communities disproportionately. And rather than, as you said, battling, going after the same dollars, maybe look at what can be done collaboratively to begin to increase that dollar amount. And then the funders will look at it, I think, differently, because now we're not pitting each other against each other. And I think that's the future. I think that's where all this was headed. But you had to do this initial research first.
Yeah.
To be able to know exactly where you stand.
Yes. It's been eye-opening. It's been eye-opening.
Joelle, where do you see in the years of your community in Houston has grown, has changed, has evolved, people are more knowledgeable and aware, but there's still the same battles in some areas to be dealt with. Perception is reality. How do you see that changing, or has it changed? Has there been more openness, more willingness, more honesty to dialogue with your community?
So I think that's a great question, Mr. Payne. I think for me, kind of aligning with what you were talking about, the answer is in the room. So I think oftentimes we as marginalized communities, Black, Brown, LGBT, we oftentimes seek the answer from outside, and the answer is actually inside. The answer is within our community. The dollars are within our community. The knowledge is within our community. We just, because we're oftentimes in survival mode and we are fighting for resources, I think when we reimagine what that future can look like, when we reimagine and turn this pyramid and this structure of systemic power on its head, and we realize that we can actually build our own structure for the future. Now, of course, we're building it from scratch, but we can actually say what we need and how we need it. And that's honestly how I see the future. I see us building it. I see us coming together. I see us collaborating because we have the resources.
Yeah. And I think finding solutions within yourself and within your own community and asking others to clearly support us. Here's what we are. Here's how it works. Here's how it operates. Not what you think, not what you've been told, not what you've been led to believe. This is the reality, and this is how you can help us if you're really sincere about doing that. I think that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Brandi, we only have about a minute left, a minute 30 seconds. So I'm gonna give you the closing word. How can people find out more about Black Impact Houston? How can they be part of it? All that's, I think, important going forward.
Absolutely. So they can reach us at blackimpacthouston.org or blackimpacthouston.com. They can find us there. And if they want to be involved in the planning process, we have a link that's there that will take them to buildblackhue.com. And so we would love to have as many individuals, whether you're Black, brown, or white, to be able to be involved in the work that we're doing.
And we'll talk more as that magical date, late fall, begins to shape up.
Yes.
We'll have you back on and announce that date and what we're going to do with it, how it's going to unfold itself. This is great work. I know it takes a lot of time and attention, a lot of detail, a lot of meetings, a lot of planning to get to this point. But I think it's going to pay off in dividends in more ways than one. I think the research will help us all understand what the reality of persons of color community, in this case, particularly African-American Black community, and how that relationship to other communities needs to be clearly understood, but also clearly data-driven and research-driven to be able to get the results we're all seeking. I want to thank you both, Joelle and Brandi, for being with us this week on Dialogue Houston. We look forward to following the work of Black Impact Houston, and we're going to continue this work. So until we all come together as usual again, we'll see you next time on Dialogue Houston. Until then, always stay safe, be well, and peace, power, and love.